It's my pleasure to introduce this evening's speaker, Oscar Olson. First, however, I want to introduce the fellow behind Oscar's slideshow. Keith Vesington is a resident of Colorado, and since 2016, he has been a corresponding member of the Utah Westerners. Since 2012, Keith has been employed as the historian and archivist for the National Western Stock Show, based out of Denver, Colorado. For 20 years before this, he was a senior appeals program analyst for the IRS. Keith is, among other history organizations, a member of the Oregon California Trails Association, the Spanish Trails Association, and many more. He too is a committed wanderer for immigrant trails, rock art, and Western historic sites. Thank you, Keith, for preparing this presentation and assisting Oscar tonight. Now, regarding Oscar Olson, I have known him since I was a teenager. For most of his career, Oscar was a Greyhound bus driver, as was Utah Westerner John Rapp's father, Harold. My father was a Greyhound bus agent and depot owner. Most of his income came from arranging charter bus travel for groups and organizations across Utah. Oscar, because of his professionalism and his kindness to passengers and his knowledge of Western and American history, he was one of my father's preferred charter bus drivers who could keep a tight schedule, keep happy busloads of homeward bound college students or Eastern tourists, or an entire bus full of a marching band. Oscar is the only child of two 20th century immigrants from Sweden. Some of his earliest memories include watching his parents dance until the wee hours of the night at the Swedish immigrant club Vasa, which met together, ate, and drank silver tea on the top floor of the IOOF, the International Order of Odd Fellows building, which still stands on Market Street here in Salt Lake City. As I mentioned in the newsletter, there's not a 10-mile square anywhere in Utah or across the Intermountain West that Oscar has not read deeply about, then tracked and discovered something of note, archaeologically or historically. Please welcome to the Utah Westerner podium, Anton Oscar Olson.
And the Cove Fort we stopped, and I've been there many times with my dad and trod and stopped on the old 91. But I took a couple of pictures, and remember now, we're taking film pictures in those days. None of this here digital stuff. You might have 24 pictures on a roll, so you got to be careful how you take pictures. So from there we went down, continued down through, which would be Tolkerville, Hurricane, to Cedar City. And at Cedar City we stopped at the El Escalante Hotel. That was on 2nd North and Main. It's gone. It's gone. We stopped there and picked up a number of people to add to the bus. And away we went after that, out west, and we stopped at Old Irontown. If you know what that is, the charcoal or coke ovens, I'm not sure what they are. And then we continued, and we spent the afternoon at Mountain Meadows site. Now, I've been there once before. I was seeing a girl in Cedar City back 10 years earlier in '58, who took me out there and kind of opened my eyes and, well, what the hell happened here, you know? Anyway, if you want to talk about hearing some stories about Mountain Meadows, you should have been on that bus that day. There was hours of stories, and these Westerners were there wearing ties and button-down shirts. That's the way it was. And anyway, we spent the afternoon there, and then we returned via Leach's Cutoff. You know what Leach's Cutoff is? You know, the Spanish Trail came down through central Utah. It entered Parowan Valley at Little Creek and went through Parowan Gap, went through Antelope Valley, over towards Newcastle and Enterprise, and then went through a place called Holt Draw. Holt Draw is a natural way out of the Great Basin into the Colorado drainage. Holt Draw was the trail, the Spanish Trail, and of course the Mormon Road started and used this road. Once they dropped past Beaver, the Mormon Road, the Los Angeles Road, went down through and followed the Spanish Trail. So when we got to Cedar City, you know, by then the iron mines had been opened up. So Cedar City caused a dogleg in the Mormon Trail, or the Salt Lake, Los Angeles Road. It started a dogleg. So what they did after leaving Cedar City, the railroad builders and the pioneers, they built what's called Leach's Cutoff, which goes from the top of the summit of Highway 56 straight west through Pinto and over to Highway 18, which leads to Mountain Meadows. This is sort of important because we did some traveling on this Leach's Cutoff. Anyway, we went the afternoon. We went to Mountain Meadows. Like I said, we spent the afternoon there, and that was the most revealing stories I've ever heard on what went on. So then we returned to Cedar City, by Leach's Cutoff, and dropped off some people, and then back down to St. George. We spent the night in St. George. This is in May of 1968. And at St. George, we spent the night at the Tribal Lodge. We went upstairs. This picture right here, that's Andrew Carl Olson. He was introducing his book, I Was Called to Dixie. I'm not sure what the pianist or the organist is all about. I don't remember that. But we're upstairs hearing his tale on his book, I Was Called to Dixie. Now I have to honestly admit, I bought one of the books that night. And of all the books I've read over the years of Southern Utah, Utah history, Mormon history, I never cracked that book open except for reference. And I apologize to Andrew Carl Olson. But anyway, after the next morning, we went around and visited a lot of local historic sites, including, you know what that is? Mulberries. Why was there mulberries down there? Because the Mormons wanted to start the silk industry, because apparently silkworms like mulberry leaves. There used to be a bunch here in Salt Lake Valley, mulberry trees. But if you had one on your property, you probably didn't want it after a while. They're messy, horribly messy. And you don't want to dare park your car under one of them, because it'll be covered with red berries, and if the birds get into it, your car will really be messy. So mulberries are, I don't know of any left. I knew years ago there was some in the valley, I remember. Mulberries, for the mulberry leaves for the silk industry. So that was, Moon Lily, Sacred Datura. Why these flowers are in here, I'll tell you why. Carl Woolsey, one of our charter members, and a photo nut with flowers, he would holler at me, stop the bus, I want a picture of that flower. Well, that endeared me to him, because I'd stop at every flower he wanted to get a picture of. And I think the other one is paintbrush, Indian paintbrush. So I'm taking pictures with Carl Woolsey. If you remember Carl Woolsey, you know, one of our charter members, you betcha, the father of Bill Woolsey. All right. And the next day we went around the country. I think this is Jacob Hamlin's home. You notice I put a bus in every picture. That's the way it was. We stopped at Jacob Hamlin's home. We went a little bit into, there's the Cotton Mission, I believe. There's an interesting place right there, the Cotton Mission. If you've been down there, through there lately, it is totally urbanized. There was the Cotton Mission in 1968. You know what the Cotton Mission is? When the Mormons tried to start all kinds of industries down in southern Utah, cotton, silk, grapes for wine, yeah, that's right. And I think even some tobacco they tried to grow then, because that was Utah Dixie, you know that, it's Utah Dixie. It's where summer sun spends the winter, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, Keith. All right, this is a little scene and these are pictures that maybe I should have left some out. This is somewhere in Snow Canyon. We went into Snow Canyon too that morning as we wandered around St. George. Brigham Young's home and a few other places that were of significant interest in the day that we were down there visiting. And this is Hurricane Fault. You know, there's a fault line that goes down through there called the Hurricane Fault. We're up on top, they're up on top of the Trampton, C. Gregory Trampton. The color pictures are mine. The black and white ones we'll see in a few minutes are not mine, they're Bud Rushell's. And we stopped there at the Hurricane Fault and then continued north. We're on the Hurricane Fault still. And then I stopped at Silver Reef. You know what Silver Reef is? It's a mining place that had silver in sandstone, which, Lord Bill, it was pretty rare occurrence anyway. There's silver and sandstone. So Silver Reef was built up because of the silver and sandstone. It's now a ghost town. It's now, I think it's a state park right now. Tells you a little bit about the mining of silver out of sandstone. See, Gregory Trampton, I was swept off my feet when I met him because of his book, Standing Up Country, which I had turned into my Bible. That was my book to read on Southern Utah history. These are scenes at Silver Reef, the ruins, the buildings, in 1968. I don't know what it's like now. I haven't been down there for years. This is the front of the Wells Fargo again, Wells Fargo Express at Silver Reef. This is Bud Rushell's picture of some equipment, mining equipment. And now we're a little bit further north. We're continuing home. It's a 2-day trip. And we're going up the old 91. This is at Fort Harmony. You know where Fort Harmony is? Fort Harmony, there's a Canaryville, New Harmony exit off of 15. Takes you out to New Harmony. Now, Fort Harmony was interesting because John D. Lee and his people got flooded out. They had to move up to New Harmony, which is it's still an existing place right now, New Harmony. But there's a historic site there for New Harmony, or Fort Harmony, which we visited here. And there's quite a few pictures here of this. Some of these, there's the plaque. And this is some of Bud Rushell's black and white pictures of the group standing around talking about Fort Harmony. And that's the Finger Canyon. If you know about the Kolob Finger Canyons, from the highway, 91 or 15, you can't see the Finger Canyons. You have to get west out towards New Harmony or another highway to see the Finger Canyon, which are pretty spectacular. The Kolob Finger Canyons of Bryce, or Zion. And there's a road through there now, kind of a dead-end road that goes up through there from the exit. This is the Finger Canyons. Of course, this is early morning, and I'm shooting into the sun. And I haven't been through photo classes yet to learn too much. But, and this is more at Fort Harmony. Some of Bud Rushell's pictures. The black and whites are Bud Rushell's, not mine. And I got them through Steve Gallons, and thanks to Steve, he gave them to me, and I have incorporated them into this talk a little bit. Back up one more, Keith. Now, let's go back. This is the last one of, now from there we went up 91 and back to the Historical Society, and I was through. I was totally in love with this group of people. Oh, wow, there's people I want to be with. but they looked at me like, yeah, right. So that was the end of that discussion. So in 72, they didn't have it, 71 and 72, this is, or wait a minute, let me back up. 69 and 70, there was no field trip. 68 when I went. The next one I went was 71. What happened to 69 and 70? Well, I got this story from Bud Rusho, who became one of my mentors in the Westerners. Apparently, one of those years, probably 69, they tried to do a trip with cars, their own personal cars, up to Piedmont and probably Fort Bridger, Wyoming. They must have went too early or something. Because Bud showed me a few pictures they had with cars. They were two private cars and they were up to their hubcaps in mud. And that probably ended that trip with a disaster, which may explain why there was no trip the next year. I don't know, I wasn't there. So anyway, in 71, I was actually requested again. The Westerners took another trip in 71. This went north up into Idaho, to Alamo, Idaho, and to join the California Trail. Now, if you know a little bit about the California Trail left the Oregon Trail at probably Fort Hall and branched out into Idaho and into corner of Utah and into Nevada. There were two forks to the California Trail. One of them is in Wyoming called Parting of Ways, and the other one is at Fort Hall. And the Oregon Trail continued west, and the California Trail continued southwest to go to the Humboldt drainage, the Humboldt River, to go west along the Humboldt. So they went into Idaho, corner of Idaho. They went through City of Rocks. Back one up. Where are we? Oh, yeah, okay, that's good right there. City of Rocks. If you've been to City of Rocks, you know that's an interesting place. Real interesting place. Lots of rocks, and if you're a rock climber, there's the place to be. But we stopped in a couple of places in City of Rocks, which is the California Road going down to the Humboldt River. And the City of Rocks has a lot of rocks, a lot of hidden places that have axle grease inscriptions or signatures. We stopped and saw a couple of those. This is Dave Miller. Those of you who are familiar with Dave Miller on our Hole in a Rock story. This is Dave Miller. I met him, and oh boy. His book was also one of my favorites, Hole in a Rock in Utah. That's Dave Miller. And then we went to, there we are looking down in one of those rocks down there, and there's some caves, some shelters that have, and I don't know if I have pictures of them or not, of the axle grease signatures, inscriptions in these rocks, which was part of the California Road, California Trail. The road continued south and west to Rock Spring. This is Rock Spring. It's on the Goose Creek Road in Nevada, which is part of the South California Road, diagonally into Nevada, diagonally. That night, after going through there, we went through Wine Cup Ranch in Thousand Springs, and into Wells, Nevada for the night. We spent the night at Wells, Nevada. And the next morning we loaded the buses up, headed west or east into Utah to Wendover. We went to Wendover, and there we turned south on Highway 93 to a few miles and took the road into Gold Hill and Ibapaw. Now we're going to do the Pony Express on the back coming back from the California Road. We're going to do the Pony Express. So we went down into Utah at Ibapaw and Gold Hill, and pretty soon we picked up the Pony Express Road, which led us east. These are all gravel roads, and bus companies in those days didn't really care too much as long as you brought them home in one piece. We're at Bagley Ranch here. Callio. We're at Callio, Bagley Ranch, Dave Bagley. And that was quite a historic site on the Pony Express, and the Central Overland Trail, and other roads that was used. This is in Callio. It's the Bagley Ranch, Dave Bagley. We must have had a cold drink shop because we've got the doors open and handing out cold drinks, I guess. So we're at Callio, Utah, heading east. Now, I don't have a lot of pictures on this trip, and I can't explain why, except that I was in photo class. These are black and whites. I was learning to shoot black and whites, and they might still be on my negative somewhere if I could dig them out. But anyway, that's about the. I got one more picture there at Lookout Pass. This is Lookout Pass on the Pony Express Road, looking east down into the big turn. There's still a road down there that's the old stagecoach road that's visible, that went east and west. So we're at the Overland Pass, and we're now heading east. Now, probably the next stop was probably Simpson Springs. If I got pictures that are on the black and white negatives, and I don't even know where they're at. We went to Simpson Springs. We probably stopped at Lookout Pass. If you know what Lookout Pass is, Orrin Porter Rockwell's, one of his wives, now some say he didn't practice polygamy, but he had another wife or two. I don't know what that means. Someone can probably tell me more about that. But we stopped there, and there's a pet cemetery there at Lookout Pass with this concrete rock wall around it, where apparently one of his wives buried some pets out there. The pet cemetery is Lookout Pass. It's right off the road. So from Lookout Pass, we drove into Utah. We're already in Utah, but we drove further in, and we finally crossed Highway 36. Went to probably, I'm losing my, the Pony Express place. Brad, where are you?
I have no friend. Tooele? Are you in Tooele? Are you in
Fairview.
The house?
Fairview.
Fairfield? Fish Springs?
It's at
That place out there.
that place out there. See, I'm starting to get a little fuzzy these days, but Camp Floyd. We stopped at Camp Floyd, which was a very important spot in the history of Utah, if you know about that facet of our history. When Johnson's army out there. We stopped there and then eventually made our way over to US 91 and up and went home. That was number 2 trip in 1971. And then the 72 trip, now I was kind of losing my enthusiasm for my job, Gray Line Motor Tours, which wasn't too promising. But I got requested again by the Western Route. I guess they must have, because you want to take this trip? Yeah, I'll take this trip. And this time we went out east on 40 through Heber and on into the Duchesne area, the Uinta Basin. I think the focus of this trip was probably the fur trade. Come on, Brad, what's?
You need Rubidoux and trappers? You're talking about trapper history?
Yeah,
Are you talking about Gallup?
I'm getting a brain freeze here, but Antoine,
Rubidoux.
come on.
Rubidoux. Or Rubidoux.
Anton Rubidoux.
Rubidoux! See, I'm showing signs, folks, I'm showing signs. Antoine Rubidoux. I think that focus of that trip was on this. Because when we, one more trip, let's see what. This is where, one of our stops in the Uinta Basin. It's a railroad train chiseled, or as a petroglyph is a railroad, and a railroad train in the rock. You know, when the Uinta Railway come over from Mac, Colorado in 1890, 1900, the Uinta Railroad come over into the Uinta Basin for Gilsonite. And that impressed the Indians to see these trains coming. So these petroglyphs were probably about 1900, 1890, 1900. George Stewart was our member out there who took us out into this part of the country. Greg will know who that is. Greg, where are you?
Right here. Yeah, I think that was Stewart, that was,
He was a charter member, I think a lawyer in the basin.
he and Floyd O'Neill were running that trip.
Back up, one more.
Oh, this is, you're in
No, I want to find the one showing the Green River.
what's the ways down?
Well, this is okay. It was overlooking the building of Starvation Reservoir. We're overlooking the building of Starvation Reservoir, which is in the Shane River and the Strawberry River feeds into that to create starvation. I can't find out where the name comes from. I've got several books on Utah and place names, but the starvation doesn't seem to come up. So I'm curious about that. Here's the Green River. Now we're going to go down in the Green River country below Ouray, which is correct for Utah. Ouray, isn't it? We're going to go down in the Green River country and find a cabin they think is Ruby Doos, which is opposite somewhere close to where the White River and the Green River come together. Well, we opened the bus door and was totally, absolutely engulfed with mosquitoes. It was horrible. We opened the bus door and the mosquitoes just come in. We slammed the door. Poor two guys that's outside. We had to get them back in somehow. So anyway, we didn't do much time looking around in the Green River bottoms for anything more because the mosquitoes were absolutely unbelievable. So therefore, when we went up into, I think it's looking for Fort Winty. Greg, where are you?
Right there.
What can you tell? Fort Uinta, it was Fort Winty to those people. And we found some cornerstones, some stones marked out. There's somewhere in the Uinta Basin, I can't.
In that, in the image there, Oster, that image? That's what you're looking at.
This is where I remember meeting Floyd O'Neill. He was, because I met Floyd earlier.
That's Floyd
But
standing.
Floyd O'Neill was on there. Was you on that trip, Greg?
I wasn't. But that's Floyd standing there looking at the pile of rocks.
Anyway, looking for the ruins of Fort Winty. And that night you can see some of the stonework there. And there were some cornerstones, what may have been Fort Winty, I think. I'm trying to go on my 60-year-old memory, folks. Come on, anyway, one more. More of the looking around for any evidence of a dwelling or things like that. But the storm was getting heavy that day. And now we're back to that petroglyph again. That's George Stewart, who was one of the charter members of the Westerners. I think Greg will remember him.
Yep, he was a character.
We did stop at a rock. We stayed that night at Bottle Hollow, those concrete teepees, if you remember them. We stayed the night there. And somehow, coming back from Fort Winty, somehow we ended up stopping at a rock that had a lot of inscriptions on it. And somehow I didn't get a picture of it. But there was supposed to be a DJ on there, Dennis Julian. I don't remember seeing that. But I found a little black arrowhead right there. Ooh. That night at dinner, we ate with the tribal officers and tribal people. And one of the members told one of the tribal members, and I found this arrowhead. And he come over to my table, do you have the arrowhead with you? I said, no, I don't. You know, she wants to see it. And I said, well, I probably wouldn't let you see it if I had it. And I said, because she'll keep it. And she looked at me like, I probably should have given it to him because that's where it properly belongs, but that's 60 years ago. So anyway, that was our experience. This is a Bottle Hollow. Those concrete teepees, if you remember seeing some of them. We stayed in those one night. It was only a one-night trip, 2 days, 1 night.
I think,
And
Oscar, I think that had just opened.
what do you
You were
say?
there, they had just barely opened up that facility.
Barely open.
Under here.
Bottle Hollow had just opened, Chris.
Oh, there's not much left of Bottle Hollow.
No,
I think there's one building, isn't there? One building left, and I think the tribal is occupying that. I think. I haven't been by there for a long time, so I don't remember much anymore. But folks, I don't get out much anymore these days because of my eyes and the situation. Anyway, this is, okay, let's get on to some other stuff now, a couple other things. How we doing on time, Brad?
You've
got 5
You're
minutes.
at 10 minutes.
Okay, be sure to let me know here. This is an OCTA trip, Oregon, California Trails trip, somewhere out in Nevada. And that's our dear, wonderful Will Bagley. And Joe Hatch. Where's Joe? We were out on one of the pioneer trails out in Nevada, probably the Central Overland Trail or the Pawnee Express Trail, on a long weekend trip. And Will Bagley brought his books along to sell some books. So he had his book store open. Good old Will Bagley. Anyway, all right. Now here's an interesting news clip from 93, I think it is. This is Dave Bigler and Will Bagley after the Baker, Oregon OCTA convention where they were elected to national positions in OCTA. So that was kind of an honor to have those people elected to national positions. And I happened to see that in the paper. I clipped it out. And just saved it. Well, Will Bagley. Oh, this is our coffee group. Now here's our coffee group. We used to have a coffee about 3 or 4 days, 2-3 days a week, a coffee group in 2 different places. One was at East 33rd South and the other one is in Holiday. And like, I think Brad reminded me of this. He says the coffee group would influence the decision by the board. The coffee group says, no, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna do it this way. And the board listened, and that's how it worked. The coffee group led the Westerners for a time. You were there, weren't you? Charles, a little bit?
A few times, yeah.
Anyway, there was about 12 or 15 people that come out pretty regular. But one at a time, we disappeared. And the last ones I know remember was John Rapp, and a couple others was Vern Gorzitzi, and I was hanging on there towards the last of the coffee group. We had fun. We had a lot of good times. And I'll have to admit something. I went to most of them. When Schindler would come, I would resent it because he would occupy the entire conversation. Because we had a lot of good people coming together with stories about this, that, and the other. But all of a sudden, when Schindler wasn't there anymore, I missed it. I should have been listening. Because when that guy spoke, it was like Will Bagley, you better listen. Schindler was an incredible encyclopedic of Utah history. He only wrote 1 book. I'm going to get into him in a minute. He only wrote 1 book. Anyway, we had the coffee group for close to 10, 15 years anyway. 2 or 3 times a week. And yeah, they were interesting and revealing. And okay, Keith.
Some of these guys also.
Okay, now this one here is our last 3 charter members. Remember that, and if you got your membership book, you can see it tells in the book there's the charter members who were there for the chartering of this organization. And that's the last three. Dave Bigler, Carl Woolsey, and W.L. Bud Russell. And we're on returning a field trip, I think it's 14, I think it is. Is the date down there?
2004.
Yeah, that's the last of the charter members. And, well, Greg Thompson's pretty close to that, because Greg joined in 1970. So that puts him pretty doggone close to be the oldest member here as far as time in the Westerners. Myself and Steve Madsen, Steve's here, we joined in 1980 through the recommendation of W.L. Bud Russell, which was, I think, pretty good credential. Bud Russell was truly was a magnificent historian and leader for the Westerners. All right, where are we?
Wrap it up.
Okay, this is go ahead. This is Bigelow. This is not a Westerner trip, but it's Westerners. This is Bigelow Bench, if you know where Bigelow Bench is, in Wyoming. It's where the Pioneer Trails cross from Fort Bridger and down into the Muddy Creek and on into history. This is, let me see if I can, Bud Russell on the far right, Vern Gorzitzi, Jerry Dunton, Dave Bigler, and Harold Schindler. Now, Bud gave me those pictures, and he said, you were there. I know I don't remember being there. But they're out in Bigelow Bench exploring for pioneer trails and sleuthing out the Oregon the California Trail into Utah. And this is where they were at. They were up in Bigelow Bench, and I was not there, but Bud said I was, but I don't think I was. This is two of our Harold Schindler, Dave Bigler, two of the principal leaders, charter members of this organization. I knew both of them to some degree. Like I said, Lewis Bigler was a Mormon bishop in my neighborhood, and I knew Lewis Bigler, and of course, to some degree, I knew Dave Bigler, but I'm just a boy. I'm just a boy, and so I'll get into them in a minute. We got some caricatures on them too. This is up in Alamo, Idaho. How many of you remember Brig Madsen?
Yeah.
Sure you do, Brig Madsen. This is up in Alamo, Idaho, on one of our field trips. And Brig Madsen was quite a writer. He wrote the Bozeman Trail, he wrote Against the Grain and other books. He was quite a writer. But up in Alamo, Idaho, they have a monument to an Alamo massacre. Brig Madsen had never heard of it before. So he started doing some research in archives and in newspapers and diaries and military records, and he says, I couldn't find any evidence of a massacre in Alamo. And he just was a doubter. He says, this didn't happen. Well, the folks in Alamo didn't like Brig Madsen. They didn't want him to come in the store. He wouldn't let him come in the store. But right there is his monument behind there to this Alamo massacre, was supposed to have happened in 1863. So anyway, as it turns out, that's Brig Madsen. Okay, a couple of more things here. One of the field trip exploring parties, it's 96. This is an interesting little story here. This is a trip we had with about 5 or 6 of us up to Uinta, Utah. You know where Uinta is? You know about the Morrisite War? South Weaver. Well, they got a cannonball right there on the table. It's in the Uinta courthouse. It's supposed to be fired during the Morrisite War, which was an interesting period of history about 1863 to 1864, the Morris sites. And this is at East Glacier, one of the field trips. I think it's Gary Kimball. And this is one more quick story. We're doing the replication of the D. Julian inscription in Mineral Canyon and Green River. Let me go back a couple. I got a minute or two on this story here. Back in about 1970, I was not in the Westerners then, but they wanted to do replications of historic inscriptions and maybe petroglyphs. So they went to Moab and talked to the BLM, and the BLM says, no, you're not going to make any replications of anything. So they wanted to do a replication, and they went into Westwater Canyon to do the Ruby-Doo inscription. That's on private property. The Ruby-Doo inscription's on private property. And they did the Ruby-Doo. Antoine Ruby-Doo, 1836, I think it is. And this is the Antoine Ruby-Doo inscription. This is also a petroglyph, but there's bullet holes there. This is on private property. And it's also fell off. Half of that's fell off. But they did the inscription. And they took it to Moab on latex and burlap, and nobody in Moab would take it because of the public outcry against allowing desecration of these signatures. So they took it to Moab, and finally I think the bank took it. But today it's in it says the Moab, Museum of Moab, I think it is now. It's in that museum along with our D. Julian. Yeah, our D. Julian. In 1990, we went down to the canyon, and we made a replication of D. Julian, and that's in the Moab Museum, and that's in the Green River Museum. There's two of them. We made them. Burlap and latex. Anyway, they took them finally, but the BLM said, no more. No more replication because of the public outcry that we might damage it. I don't think we did, because I understand Nate's been down, says that we peeled it off that day, and the BLM was there, and we were scared to death, but it peeled right off. Anyway, it looks like I'm getting the hand wave. It's time for me to button this up. I hope this has been a little entertaining to you and a little revealing to you.
Yeah.
As to what the early Westerners was like. I was going to talk about Larry Gerlach a little bit. I appreciate him rejoining after we let girls come in. That's a whole nother story. I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, thanks for giving me this time tonight, folks. Revealing and a little bit entertaining to you. I'm sorry I'm showing signs of age, but that's nothing you can do to stop the clock. Anyway, I appreciate our guests here tonight and all the people who have come and who helped put this together. And let's call it a night. Thank you, everybody.
Take just a couple
Q&A. You got any Q&A?
Take a couple of questions.
Yeah, you're gonna have to relay them to me.
All right, so it sounds like you were driving a bus before you were an expert on Western history and Utah history and that sort of thing. So who did your homework? Who put your scripts together? Who figured out for you what would be interesting for your audience to hear? And how did you become not just a bus driver, but a presenter and a speaker and a historian?
I just started reading books. I couldn't read enough books on Utah history. One of the best I ever read was Beyond the 100th Meridian by Stegner. That really told me how the Utah and the West was really like. Wallace Stegner. And of course I went through Crampton's book, Standing Up Country, till I memorized that almost. Run the Glen Canyon, I found out that there's history in Utah that's unbelievable, which includes the Hole Trail, the Spanish Trail, the Escalante Dominguez, the miners, Powell, John Wesley Powell. I couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough of reading Western history. And
So the bus company did not force you to have a script and a presentation, and they say you're going to take this group and you're going to be an expert and you're gonna give a presentation and be the tour guide and the bus driver. You did that all on your own, without them telling you that that was your job.
I did. I love Utah history, still do.
Okay,
I wish I could read some more, but I'm through reading these days unless I get someone to help me, but I'm legally blind.
Greg Thompson has a
I'm legally
question,
blind.
Oscar.
I want to salute, or what's that question out there?
Wasn't that first trip that you articulated in the opening of your speech, the first trip for the Westerners that was overnight? Wasn't that their very first field trip?
This is the first Westerners trip, and
Yeah.
I just caught it off the working board. Dispatcher said, "Do you want this trip to St. George this weekend?" Yeah, why not? And it changed my whole life. It changed my whole life, everybody. The Westerner's been the greatest part of my life. It really has, and I hope I've contributed a little bit, because I am not an academe. I'm self-educated. I'm not an academe. I just have been so excited to be in the Westerners all these years, and to mingle with people who are smarter than me, which I like to be around, people who are smarter than me. And it's been a wonderful education. And Jerry Dunton and Bud Rusho are two of the finest people that I have befriended. I can't name them all, the people I've had good friends with the Westerners. It's just been too many. It's been a great organization. Thank you all for being younger people. Oh, one more thing I want to touch on. We were part of the Westerners International. We were part of the Westerners International for a while. But I think we didn't want to be in the Westerners International because they wanted us to be called a posse and a sheriff. And this group did not want to be called a posse and a sheriff. So I don't know if we're still in it or not. Thank you, everybody.
thank you.